Okay, let's go cracking. Um, welcome to this session, which is called "When Web Forms Aren't Enough: Building Custom Forms and Workflows for Complex Council Processes." Um, this will be presented by Simon from Agile Collective and Rachael Keating from Walsall Council, um, who we'll say hello to in a moment. But we'd just like to take this opportunity, as always, to thank our sponsors, with whom this really wouldn't be possible. Thank you to Anatech, who hold the current development contract, to Agile Collective, who have been our previous developers through Alpha and Beta, and who hold our current support and hosting and maintenance contract, and to Big Blue Door, who are currently sponsoring Mark to work on the LocalGov Drupal platform. And thanks to all of our council and supplier subscribers, of course, and our supporting partners who've contributed so much money and time and energy to the project. Zoom help, just in case anyone isn't familiar with Zoom, there's a little view on the top right of your screen where you can change the view between like a sort of presenter or multiple side by side. So have a little play with that to see what works best for you and your setup. We are recording the session for future posterity. I never know which one, but probably both. So if you don't want your face on screen, feel free to hide your video. And having said that, I will now hand over to Simon from Agile Collective for when web forms aren't enough. Over to you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Finn. So yeah, as Finn said, we're going to talk about web forms and when they're not enough. So we are Agile Collective. We're a digital agency based in Oxford with members in UK, France, Italy, and Sweden. We've been involved with the LocalGov Drupal project since the alpha phase, so you might be familiar with some of our faces. And I'll hand over to Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachael Keating from Walsall Council. I'm the Digital Customer Platform Manager, which means I manage the web team and our web forms. We've been on Drupal since 2022 and LGD since last year.
Okay, so the talk we're going to give kind of a quick overview of what the work we've been doing in partnership with Walsall, and then hopefully open this up to some questions and discussion at the end. So here are some things to think about as we're going through the presentation, and then we'll revisit this at the end. I'm going to hand over to Rachel, who's going to introduce the problem.
Hi. Well, like most councils, I think our aim is to get our users off face-to-face email and telephone calls and onto as many digital interactions as we can. So primarily we like to use the CRM system, which is Microsoft Dynamics, but that's relatively new, and it can be quite slow to get interactions onto the system. We've got quite a lot of web forms already, and they're written in DNN, which is quite a robust solution, but it was totally open source and now it's moved away from that, and there's some modules and are chargeable, and it's not a CRM, it's not our CMS system of choice. So we're looking to move away from DNN and move on to Drupal because that's our CMS. So I'm sure in keeping with other councils, we've not got just got web forms, we've got editable PDFs, we've got just PDFs, we've got Word documents, we've got all sorts of things that we throw at our users in the hope that they're going to send us something back. So what we're looking for, like I say, is a seamless kind of like digital service wherever possible, and that has to work between different digital systems. For us, we're looking to replace DNN, and it has to be comparable with what we've currently got. So that's where we are with that. In regard to the way our service areas work, we have some processes that are nice and simple. We quote you a price, you pay it, and we do it. Other services, not so simple. We need to review whether or not you should have something like a parking dispensation before we can tell you whether or not we're going to allow you to pay for it. So these become sort of two-step processes. They become things where we need to engage in a conversation with the users in order to give them the correct price, make sure they're paying the right amount, ensure everyone's the same. We have to refund. We have to then ask users for more money if they haven't paid the right amount. So especially where payments are concerned, we do find that we have quite a bit of a drawn out process to engage with them to make sure we get the right amount of money. And then ultimately for us, what we want to be able to do is to make it as simple as possible for our users to engage with us. So any of the big forms can be saved as draft. Our service areas can look at them. They can have a conversation with them. We can get the right information. We can integrate payments. We also need to be able to see what the history of the form is, who's been looking at it, how long it's taken us to deal with it, assign tasks. And then also we need to be able to govern who can see different forms within both within teams and within separate service areas. So that's where we're at. So over to you, Simon, for dealing with the gaps.
Thank you. So LocalGov Drupal web forms is a module, set of modules that are available. It builds on web form, which is a very popular Drupal community module. And it's really, really well suited to these kind of simple forms, contact forms, feedback forms. I know quite a lot of people use them for those kind of feedback on their web content. But yeah, there's been some great work done by the LGD community to kind of enhance those and bring them more in line with what local government requires. So they are a really good starting point for this. But there were some gaps from Walsall's requirements. So moving off their previous DNM platform, some of the key gaps we identified were the DNN system provided these kind of easy bi-directional forms where they could go back and forth between the council and service user, and those kind of easy case style interactions. It also had some automation built in, so you could automate events after other things had happened. And it was really easy for Walsall to do data integration, which was partly because these things sat on the same database server as a number of their line of business applications, which might not be as applicable for other people. So what did we do? The solution. So we took the Drupal approach. We extended what was existing rather than replacing it. And we built on Drupal's core strengths rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. So in practice, what does this mean? We lent heavily on some very popular community modules. So we've implemented Drupal Commerce, which is an enterprise-grade e-commerce platform, which provides order items. You can integrate payment providers. It gives you order histories. You can do your kind of full financial reconciliations with all your order broken down by line items, and the ability to do price lists, which was quite a key feature, and have your scheduled price lists for the future as well. We also use something called event condition action, which is kind of more relatively new in the Drupal world, but gaining quite a lot of popularity. And that allows for some automation. It has a kind of process-driven UI. So it uses business process modeling notation language. But that's really the glue that kind of holds some of the stuff we've created together. And we also use a module called Group, which is heavily used in LocalGov microsites. And this builds on Drupal's already kind of really strong permission system and allows us to get that absolutely critical requirement around ensuring that only the appropriate people can see the submission data that comes in. So we can have the teams represented in Drupal, and teams can only see the forms that they are dealing with and not. The parking people can see parking forms, they can't see planning forms. And there was some custom code. So this is the techie bit. So we created a custom entity that represents these processes. It still uses core Drupal concepts, so it uses something called the state API to manage statuses. But this essentially allows us to manage all these multiple web form submissions, multiple orders that relate to a single request, as one process, one transaction with one status. So forms handlers, if you're not familiar with web form, they are kind of the superpower in web form. They allow you to actually extend the functionality beyond a kind of simple form builder. So we built a few custom form handlers. So there's one we'll talk about a bit more about how we are managing to create orders through answering questions in a form rather than a traditional kind of select your products and put them in a basket process. A handler that allows us to copy data between submissions so that we're not asking people to submit the same information multiple times. And the handler that also provides us a link between this kind of parent process entity, so we can associate, say, submissions of this form are related to this transaction. We also implemented a check your answers, if you're familiar with the check answers GDS pattern, which is a really good example of collaboration. This was some work that was originally done for Greenwich, who kindly shared the code with us, and the Walsall team took that and built on it for it to meet their requirements. So I'm now realizing, having seen the previous session, that I could have done a video rather than screenshots, but this is what we have for now, some screenshots of what the solution looks like in practice. So we've got a staff view. So this is a central dashboard where you can see all of the requests that are coming in. It gives you that kind of at-a-glance view of what status they're at, allows you to assign stuff, allows you to work on the things that you've been assigned. For residents, we've built on what was available in web form, what had been contributed already by the LocalGov Drupal community. So we said about the ability to copy data forward between forms, so we're not asking people for the same information twice. Some really good work done in the Walsall team in getting the error messages and guidance text, exactly to GDS standards, making sure it's accessible, usable. And a challenge that people might have experienced before if they've worked with web forms, this idea of having to, where you might be asked to upload some number of documents, one-to-many documents. So the ability to do that without having to create a form with 10 document upload fields, 20 document upload fields. There can just be one component that can handle as many document uploads as required, and that can be dynamic based on question answers. The check answers thing, which is really a great pattern to implement. It helps with the quality of all of your submissions. So the final step before you submit your form, you are shown a summary of all the answers you've done, and it gives you a link. So if you want to change any of those answers, you can. So this URL link will take you directly to the place where that question was answered, allow you to change your answer, and then take you straight back to the summary page. It's really useful. So payments, so this is integrating the Drupal commerce system. So yeah, one of the things that we're doing here is people might not necessarily know what they need to pay for. So having that kind of concept of, I'll go to a catalog, pick an item, pay for it, wasn't quite right. So we are generating the orders based on what questions people answer, which is a pretty neat solution. But you can also use it in a kind of more traditional e-commerce way. We've integrated with Walsall use Pay360's secure card portal, but they use their own custom API to wrap around that. So we've dropped that in as a payment provider, and it's a really nice thing about the Drupal commerce system is you can just create your own payment providers. So if there are a bunch of community ones available already. If people are using common ones, you could build one and share it. I know a lot of people use Civica Pay, which would need to have its own provider written, but that could be done. And I know there's already some really good work that's gone on looking at integrations with gov.pay, with, again, I think Greenwich and WebCurl and other people in the LGD community. So what are our key learnings from this project? So if you've worked on a forms project before, you will be familiar. Getting the wireframes right, spend as much of your effort as possible on the wireframing stage. It is much cheaper and easier to get it right there than it is further down the line. And there were some really good wireframes from the team at Walsall. As far as possible, we've tried to build everything as reusable components. I think gov.uk Forms has a really good example of a library of components that you can just drop into the forms. We're not there. We haven't got quite there in the work we've done, but having that kind of mindset is useful. And there's something in here around balancing how much effort you put into improving the UX and designing for your audience. I think if Rachel, if you want to say more about that point.
Yeah, the using commerce let us sort of stand up more of a catalogue, a bit more like ordering through Amazon. So we could decide whether or not we wanted to go in through a catalogue view, and then the user experiences, they pick something up front, or we could decide we could put quite a lot more in at the back and sort of affiliate them more as sort of add-ons. So we were just able to, depending on how complex the processes were, we were just able to make it a little bit easier for the user. If it's relatively simple, we use the products. If it's not so simple, we use lots and lots of questions in the forms. Either way, we're trying to make sure that the users and the service area both end up with the right information without sort of giving up too soon in the process.
Great. So yeah, what was the result? So we have built a kind of public-facing case management functionality into a LocalGov Drupal website. And that includes integrated commerce, it includes workflow, and the ability to manage these kind of more complex multi-step processes, which is pretty cool. So what next? Yeah, we have built quite a few components here that we'd like to get back into the LocalGov Drupal community. We were quite tunnel visioned in the project and trying to get them up and running and working because, you know, the usual constraints of time and money and everything else. But we did try to keep an eye to these being reusable things or things that could be shared. You know, we haven't built a complete set of features that would enable you to replace, you know, some of the systems that are out there in this place. It's not going to be a drop-in replacement for your Jadus, your OutSystems, or GOS or Granicus. But we think we've got, you know, some of the core bits of that functionality implemented and in the state that we could share. It'd be great to get feedback on which bits are kind of core features and which bits are kind of more council specific, so where things should be kind of core functionality or add-ons, and yeah, try and make this part of the forms, LGD forms module. I mean, something else is in here around naming. I think I've referred to these as workflows, processes, and transactions throughout this talk. So getting some feedback on naming conventions would be really useful because it's very hard to change names down the line. So again, just revisiting those questions I posed at the beginning. Is any of this of interest? Do you have other complex processes? Is this the kind of thing you'd be interested in using? And would you be interested in having a follow-up chat about this? So probably the best way to get in contact is on the LGD Slack community, particularly the feature forms channel. But you can contact me directly. That's my email address, and Rachel's email address is on there as well. So I'd like to open this up to any questions.
There's a couple of things in the chat, Simon. Finn's, what's the largest number of documents that a form requires and is covered with some form of form validation? I can tell you what we've done, if that helps. We've got a standard that we don't have more than 15 documents on any field, and the size of those, it tends to be no more than 50 meg, but that's our restriction. I don't think we've pushed it higher than that.
And then does that have any validation on it? Like, does the submitter of that form need to have a certain number of documents, or is there any kind of like validation of those types or number of documents to indicate that doing the right way?
Yeah, validation's done by I think unless Richard's going to come in, Richard.
I was just going to say, if you want, I can help add to that. It depends, Finn. It depends. There's two features in PHP. You've got the maximum number of documents you can upload in a single form submit, and then there's also the amount of data you can do in a form submit, and you've got to strike a balance and do whatever you can to help the user out with that. So if you say the most documents you can add are 15 in our circumstance. Actually, behind the scenes, we use Pantheon for our hosting, and it's actually 50 documents, and the maximum upload, I think, is 50, and 50 megabytes, or maybe it's 100 megabytes in size. It's got to, you got to have to spread the load across 15 divided by 100, so it's
you can have hundreds the maximum, but it's 100 per document. I don't know how long you'd have to wait if you were trying to upload that many files on your form. Quite a long time, I'd imagine.
And, yeah, so we did we did spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to give an accurate, helpful error message to the user to say what your limitations are and things, but the simpler you can make it, the better, the easier it's going to be for you. There's only so much we can program around it at the moment that we've been able to suss.
I mean,
And
is it worth saying that the forms we were trying to implement in this work we did with Walsall was pre-planning applications. So this is an example where somebody could genuinely have, an over 50 meg file of an architectural drawings,
Yes.
Hopefully in a lot of other scenarios, like those kind of file sizes, people wouldn't even accidentally reach.
Yeah, you'd need to come up with some other possible solution, like, if it's greater than that, then use WeTransfer or something like that, or
to be fair, we did work with the planning team, and they were happy with the 50 meg limit because we had more than one document, so we still had up to 15 documents of 50 meg each. So so they were happy with that, and they didn't have many examples of documents that were going to exceed that.
And just thinking about it, like the documents that are uploaded, are they still in the Drupal file system and the Drupal web form system, or do they get handed off to another system or API or somewhere else where the planning team take and consume those submissions?
You're piggybacking more questions on there, Finn.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a fair question as well. We looked at Azure Blob storage, and we got really quite close to resolving that one. At the moment, but we've gone back to using Drupal's private file system in Pantheon for storing, just because of the idiosyncrasies between Pantheon and the way the council's Azure intranet setup is set up, that there would need to be a service principal access set up in Pantheon to send the files through, and it was a risk they just didn't feel comfortable with, that it was
Plus,
safe.
we're working with service areas who do have their own line of business application. So once we've sent them the files, they detach them and save them in their line of business application. So we could write APIs to hook into those, but it was complicated enough with the work that we were doing for planning for the pre-applications.
For sure, one step at a time.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Alina in Greenwich about testing the Drupal's drag and drop file uploads. Is that something that you did at Walsall? And the question is, which ones do you like the most? Has anyone tested the different drag and drop interfaces? I guess is the question. Is that something that you? No,
I don't know.
So maybe that's the question for the wider chat. If anyone else has got anything to reply to that. Bancy from Greenwich also asked about the file scanning and storage system. So what tools are you using for file scanning and the storage system? I think you've already mentioned the storage system is Drupal's private file system. But file scanning, are you scanning the files in any way for?
Pantheon provides out of the box ClamAV for file scanning. So
for viruses.
for antivirus stuff. If and when we switch to using hosting within Azure by container apps, that sort of thing, will be most likely relying on whatever is offered via Microsoft Defender and that sort of thing.
Okay. I mean, sorry, Bansi, do you want to just clarify, by file scanning, did you mean viruses or did you mean some other type of file scanning?
Yeah, thanks, Finn. Yeah, thanks, Richard, for answering. Yeah, I was mean by like one of the solution is a claim AV we also thinking about, but other kind of scanning, like are you planning to use any kind of recognizing tool for blurriness checking, or have you had anything like this?
What checking? What was that last checking?
For the document uploads, like any blurriness check or any text recognition.
So I guess maybe sort of AI tools for making sure that the file looks like the type of file we're expecting. So if we're expecting an image of a person, then it looks like an image of a person, or when you upload your passport photo or whatever, it kind of checks it's, so yeah, any other kind of analysis of the quality of the file upload.
Oh,
We haven't yet. Sorry, Richard. No, we haven't yet.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. I just want to know, like, if you use, then which kind of tool are you using?
Mm. And I guess just from a technical point, extending that question, like Simon, you mentioned it's all pluggable, right? It's all this web form, extending it with different form handlers and validations. And so there would be the potential to plug in some kind of checking the file, coming back to say whether it was looking good or whether you might want to double check that you've uploaded the right file.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Thanks, Bansi. Got a question from Neil Zakharovich, sorry, it'd be RBK and LBS. What types of users have you opened this up to? What's the technical level up for a user? So by user, are we talking about, Neil, can you just confirm, are we talking about the people who are submitting the form or the people who are building the forms?
I'm hi there. Thanks for answering the question. For the people creating them, my thoughts in my head are, Google Forms we want to get rid of. We have Jot Forms we use to step up that, and we have a separate team creating Granicus forms. So my thinking is the type of people creating these forms from scratch. What's the technical level expected? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I think Rachel can talk about who's using it currently. Aspirationally, it should be fairly easy to use. We have tried to use forms handlers, all things that can be set up via the UI. So if somebody's confident in using the Drupal UI, in theory, they should be able to use it. But I think a bit more polish required. Rachel.
Yeah, it's our it's the technical team who are using it at the moment, but I mean, we definitely aspire to having something like the gov.uk forms where you can choose your components and then build them up. So I would hope that somebody who's sort of like a senior content strategist type person or lead content writers would be able to do it in future, I would hope, aspirationally.
Yeah, we've started to use, I think it's called web form composites as well, so that we can create groups of forms that get reused, groups of fields that can be reused, etc., like about me or about you sort of details, so it can group a variety of forms, fields together with the appropriate validations and that sort of thing, so that you don't have to recreate that every time, and training up someone to know how to build the forms would hopefully make that a bit easier as well.
Is that the contrib module that I've just popped in there, webform_composite?
That's exactly the one.
Very cool. I hadn't come across that. Sounds like a useful tool.
Yeah.
In fact, thinking on that, just along that lines, Simon, you had a slide back a little bit further back, which I kind of missed, but it was the other tools that you were building on. You mentioned commerce. Could you just remind me what the other kind of key content modules that you were using to build on?
ECA, event
ECA.
condition action, and group, which handles all of that service to form permissioning.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm just kind of popping links in there to those in case there are people new to Drupal, or yeah, it's always interesting to go and to learn about new contributed modules that we can weave together in on top of our LocalGov Drupal site to do more powerful things. We've got there's a question on wireframes from Helen Davison. What tools do you use for the wireframing? You mentioned that wireframe is super important, and the more you get it right in the wireframe stage, the less technical debt you're going to build up by building the wrong things. So what tools do you use for that?
Got Balsamic and Figma. We're also using sort of taking the output from that as well and using some of the AI tools using to generate the conditional logic flows, and a lot of the error messages based on GDS error messages. So we're trying to use as much as we can. So we've got different information in different places, but generally build them in Balsamic and then put them into Figma if we really need to. We don't need the high fidelity wireframes because we're doing it all internally, but when we work with a third party elsewhere on CRM, we did use high fidelity wireframes.
And then are these functional wireframes that you're then testing the flows through with users before refining?
We're doing prototyping wireframes. Even though they're low fidelity, the ones in Balsamic are pretty good for that prototyping. So that gives them a feel for how they're going to move forward with different logic flows. It also helps us keep it as close to GDS as we can, because then obviously you'll know that if you're trying to make some of these things too complex, you probably need to break it down a bit more.
There's a question around web form revisions and a whole thread following that, which I haven't read yet. But the question is, does web form have revisions? To which it sounds like the answer is yes. Are you at Walsall and Agile Collective, are you using web form revisions at all?
Just basically what's being said there is where we stand. It's good to see Faraz. Haven't chatted with him in a few years, and Karen's answer was, yeah, we've heeded people saying it's a bit tricky, and so our palms have been sweating when we thought about revisions at this stage.
Somebody else says it's not the prettiest, but it does work. Eeks has a more technical take. It's a problem because you can change the form after the submissions. Right, yeah. So if you're changing the structure of the form after you've had some submissions, then is the data that has been submitted still, correlating to the structure of the form, and you end up with some kind of data mishmash in your results.
Yes.
Yeah, go on, Richard.
No, I'm just nodding sagely.
We're feeling like that could be painful indeed.
I mean, I think we've tried to keep the forms to not rely on the data in the forms being revisionable, that the submission is, the form is then uneditable, which is partly, how this process works. We're not just using one web form that gets revisited and updated with, with different sections for different users. We're using different web forms, different submissions, and joining them together, if that makes sense.
Indeed. Yeah, I could go further on that question, but I won't. I'll park it there because it's melting my head just thinking about the question I was about to ask. Moving on to other people's questions. David B asked about getting data into the back office system. How are staff getting data back into back of house systems? Do you email submissions? Do they log in and view it online and then copy it out to other staff? Are you using APIs? And I think that kind of links into Jas Sheena's question. How difficult is it to integrate a form with your case management system? They're possibly two sides of the same question there.
I don't think it is, and yes to all of the above. Sometimes we send emails, sometimes we render the information into the email, sometimes we attach a PDF. You don't have to save the submission, you can just send the PDF. Sometimes we only save it in Drupal. It really does depend on whether or not there is a line of business application, whether or not that line of business application is one we're keeping because we don't want to put a lot of information into something that's probably on the way out. So you can create CSV files and then hand it over to them and say the upload is your problem. Or you can do an API, almost any of the above.
And so these kind of questions are part of the form design process
Yes,
when
yeah,
you've got your use case, your business case or whatever, and you're going through the wireframing, and you're also thinking about where it's going to be submitted. Is it going to be stored here? Is it going to be stored here? And
yeah.
defining that part of the process at that point.
Yeah, so one of the things that Simon showed you is the dashboard. So it's if they do keep it in Drupal, are they just going to keep the submission? Do they want some extra fields like who's managing it? What's the status of it? How long, what happens after kept it, all that kind of thing. So we define all of that in advance before we really build it out. So we know we've got, they know what they expect to look at when they come and do the testing.
And there might be some particular cases with certain service areas where the data is so sensitive we don't even want to store it in Drupal, and it's merely a method to deliver an email to the service area, and we only have track of that something was sent, but we don't keep any record of it just for data sensitivity purposes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we keep
So,
numbers, but that's the idea, is that before we delete anything, we'll know that something happened on this date, so we can tag the volumes, but that's about it. And somebody asked earlier as well, we do have save as draft. So we use the same method that the gov.uk uses with tokens at the moment, because all of this is anonymous. So people aren't signing into Drupal. Drupal's not our, even though Commerce does let you do this, we don't get people to sign in for their orders or anything else that we're creating. We just do it all as anonymous, which means that save as draft has got tokens rather than logins, because we would expect that to be driven through an interface into our dynamic CRM, but we're not there yet.
As I say, that using the forms handlers, at Agile Collective, we've built several to common CRMs, as I'm sure anybody working in a Drupal agency has. And I know that in the LocalGov Drupal community, there'll be a bunch of you using the same shared systems. So it'd be really great to write those handlers and share them. Make it a little bit easier for the next person to implement that kind of integration. I can see there's another question from Bouncy around the update the form and saving feature. How do the forms get updated after submission, and how does the service determine the final submission? So yeah, this is back to for what we've done so far. We're assuming that initial submission is the final data set. So the next step in that process might reuse data from that form, but it creates a new submission. So it's a way of working around that. And then there is a question like, possibly, do you actually want to hold the core revisionable data model somewhere else? So we've got this process entity. In theory, that could be where you keep your full revisionable set of data, and then you can just pull that in and out of forms as required. These are possible solutions. I'm not sure what happened to Finn. If he's
I am back. Sorry, my internet just totally cut out. I've just jumped on the backup. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
You walked over to your neighbor's house to connect to their Wi-Fi instead.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, sorry about that. Did the Zoom? Well, it seems like the Zoom call carried on, so that's good. Yeah. Where are we up to? So what have I missed? Were there any? Did you talk about case management systems?
Yes.
We did.
Okay. I missed that bit. I'll go and watch the recording. Okay.
So
And I
I think
Um,
sorry, I was going to say we want to do what David's done as well. So where he's saying there's a periodic data cleanse to obfuscate the personal data. That's what we want to do for orders as well. So we just cleanse any kind of data on the order and keep the orders with no identifying information on them.
yeah,
You'll be glad to know, Rachel, that I've got a PR for that, so it's
So
nearly
exciting.
ready.
and we did implement the same for the web form submissions, didn't we? As part of this project. So the same principle: get rid of the personal data, but keep the key information for reporting.
Yeah.
Commerce,
yeah, I think there's
sanitize.
a similar there's something related on the LocalGov Forms submodules. I'm not sure if it's specifically for Netcall or not, because obviously there's integrations with Netcall on that. Adnan had written some additional data cleansing, not even saving the data, I think, potentially as well, which is probably optimum for some super sensitive data. So how many web forms have you got now in the LocalGov Drupal web form system?
Not as many as we'll have in a few months when Agile Collective
Okay.
finish migrating the rest of it. We've probably only got about 4 or 5 that are live at the moment, but there's a lot that are working their way through the process. We've got, before we move
And
off DNN, we've got till March next year, so we're just gradually migrating over.
And what's the target? What's the target total?
About 50.
Okay.
That's just the DNN forms. We've got an awful lot of PDFs and Word documents, but the part 1 is getting off DNN.
Mm-hmm. So my chat's gone a little bit out of order, maybe because I've disconnected and joined again. If there's any questions that haven't been asked, please flag that up. I've just got one question, just thinking about web forms and microsites, just linking back to some of the thinking earlier in the missions for next year. Do you have any microsites? Are there ever going to be need for web forms in microsites? It sounds like you've got your kind of web form estate, if you like it, in LocalGov Drupal. Yeah, do you have microsites? And if and when you move microsites to LocalGov Drupal, would you ever put web forms within microsites, or would you keep web forms all on a separate install?
We've currently got them on a separate install. We were planning to move them back all together. So at the moment, it wouldn't matter to us. We'd just link to the form from wherever it was called. But I don't know how easy that would be, especially with groups on microsites. If we're using groups, I don't know. We'd have to look at that when we decide to.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So using group for different things, using group for the permissions of the microsites, but also for permissions. Add some complexity there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think each
okay.
its.
Go on, Simon. Sorry.
Yeah, I can say, I think as part of this project, EEX did write a module that handles web form relationships via submissions, or the other way around, submission relationships via web form with group, which I think in theory, he'll tell me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, could go directly into a microsites for handling that.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we have just finished that train of thought. We have web form in microsites. We have LocalGov web form as part of the default microsites installed for contact forms and these kind of things. It shares web forms across all sites, but submissions are group specific, and so that's something we need to address because that's not how everybody wants it to work. So that kind of permissions thing. But it'd be interesting to collaborate on that maybe next year as we go forward on both the web forms and the microsites front. We are at time. There was just one more question, but it's around what using web forms for. Maybe we can follow that up, Zeki, in the chat or indeed in the Slack, about all the different things people use web forms for. But I have been instructed that it's 45 minutes long, this session, so we should wrap up now. So thank you so much to Simon from Agile Collective and Rachel from Walsall Council for all your work and for sharing that with us. Super interesting stuff. Obviously, a massive thanks to everybody, all of you for coming. I think it was peaked out at maybe 90. Was it 90 or not? But pushing 100 people, which is fantastic for a Monday afternoon. I hope you found it useful. Please do give your feedback. There will be an email coming through to say how did you rate that session out of 5, where 5 is high and 1 is low. Feel free to score it how you wish, but do please explain your score if you think there's any reason to. Thank you again to our sponsors, for Anatech, to Agile Collective, and to Big Blue Door. There are more sessions this week. Have a look on Luma, lou.mar/localgov Drupal, where all the sessions are. I'm guessing that's how you found this one. Please do register for the other sessions. That's it from us. Hopefully we'll see you again in the coming days. Thank you very much.